I was sitting in my downtown office reviewing quarterly reports for my financial planning clients when my phone buzzed with a text from my brother Kevin. The message hit me like a physical blow. "We gave your spot to Kevin's girlfriend, she's more fun." I stared at the screen in complete disbelief. Just that morning, I had transferred the final payment of $9,300 for our dad's 64th birthday trip to Japan. This was the place our late mother always dreamed of visiting, especially during cherry blossom season. 4 months of planning, researching hotels, booking flights, arranging private tours. All of it meant to honor her memory. I set my phone down on my mahogany desk and tried to process what had just happened. The text felt surreal, like something from a nightmare rather than reality. My mind immediately went to the hours I had spent planning every detail of this trip, the culmination of a promise I made to myself 16 years ago when our mother Sarah passed away from cancer. Growing up, I was always the responsible one in our family. Dad raised my younger brother Kevin and me alone after Mom died when I was 16 and Kevin was 13. While Kevin spent his teenage years partying and barely graduating high school, I worked 2 jobs to help support our family. I sacrificed my original college plans to attend community college part-time, slowly building my way up to where I am now, as a successful financial advisor. Our mother used to keep travel magazines hidden under her side of the bed. I discovered them after she passed, filled with bookmarked pages about Japan's temples gardens and the famous cherry blossoms that bloom each spring. She had circled pictures of the Sensoji Temple in Tokyo and written little notes in the margins about wanting to experience a traditional tea ceremony. Dad never knew about these magazines because Mom didn't want him to worry about money for vacations when we could barely afford her medical treatments. Kevin, now 29, still lives in one of my rental properties, rent-free. He works various part-time jobs, but never seems to stick with anything long enough to build a real career. Despite his lack of financial responsibility, he has this effortless charisma that draws people to him. Everyone loves Kevin's easygoing nature and quick sense of humor, while they see me as the serious, uptight older brother who always talks about budgets and planning. 3 months ago, Kevin started dating Amanda, a 24-year-old blonde who works at a trendy cocktail bar downtown. From our first meeting, something felt off about her. She asks too many questions about my business, our family's financial situation, and always steers conversations toward money and assets. When I mentioned this concern to Kevin, he laughed it off, saying, "I'm just protective because I don't want him to be happy." The Japan trip had been my idea from the beginning. Dad's 64th birthday was approaching, and I wanted to do something meaningful to honor both him and Mom's memory. I spent countless evenings researching the perfect itinerary. I booked us into the Park Hyatt Tokyo, the same hotel from that movie Mom loved. I arranged for a private guide who specialized in historical sites and could take us to the exact temple Mom had circled in her magazines. The total cost came to exactly $9,300 for the 3 of us. First-class flights to accommodate Dad's bad knees, luxury hotel rooms with views of Mount Fuji, private transportation between cities, reservations at exclusive restaurants that required months of advance booking, and even a traditional tea ceremony at the Urasenka Foundation that Mom had specifically written about wanting to experience. I coordinated everything through my travel agent, making sure Dad would have the most comfortable experience possible. I researched wheelchair-accessible temples since his arthritis has gotten worse over the years. I even learned basic Japanese phrases so I could help translate if needed. Every detail was planned with love and careful consideration for making Mom's dream come true through Dad. But now, staring at Kevin's text, I felt something inside me crack. I immediately called his number, hoping this was some kind of misunderstanding or poorly timed joke. Kevin answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful and casual, like he was discussing weekend plans rather than destroying months of careful preparation. "Hey, Cecil got my message, I see. Look, don't take it personally, but Amanda really wants to experience Japanese culture, and Dad thinks she'll bring more energy to the trip than you would with all your spreadsheets and schedules." Kevin, I planned and paid for this entire trip. Every single detail was arranged and paid for by me. Yeah, but it's Dad's birthday, not yours. He should get to choose who he wants to celebrate with, right? Amanda brings fun to family gatherings instead of always talking about financial planning and investment portfolios. My heart sank as I realized there was something deeper happening here. When did you and Dad discuss this decision? We've been talking about it for a couple weeks in our group chat. Well, me, Dad, and Amanda have been chatting about the trip details. Amanda had some really great ideas for activities that would be more exciting than all those boring temple visits you planned. The revelation hit me like a punch to the stomach. They had a secret group chat. For weeks, my own family had been discussing and planning changes to the trip I organized and financed without including me in the conversation. My brother and father had essentially formed an alliance with a woman who had been in our lives for only 3 months, while excluding the person who made the entire trip possible. So Dad specifically chose Amanda over me for the trip I planned for him? Cecil, don't make this weird. Dad just wants to have fun on his birthday, instead of following some rigid itinerary. Amanda brings out his playful side. And honestly, you can be pretty controlling when it comes to family stuff. The phone call ended with Kevin promising we'd figure something else out for me to celebrate Dad's birthday. Maybe a nice dinner when they returned. I sat in my office chair, staring out the window at the city below, feeling more alone than I had since the day Mom died. My own father had chosen a stranger over his son for a trip designed to honor his late wife's memory. After the shock of Kevin's phone call wore off, I decided to investigate exactly how this betrayal had unfolded. I started by checking Amanda's social media accounts, something I had avoided doing before because I trusted Kevin's judgment about his relationships. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Amanda's Instagram account showed posts dating back 3 weeks with captions like, "Finally getting my dream Japan trip," and "Can't wait to experience authentic Japanese culture." She had been posting about this trip as if it were her own idea, using details about our mother's interest in Japanese temples that only our family should know. One post particularly stung, a photo of her holding a travel guidebook about Tokyo with the caption, "Researching all the best spots for a very special birthday celebration. Some dreams are worth waiting for." The guidebook looked familiar, and then I realized it was the same edition our mother had owned, the one with her handwritten notes in the margins. Amanda had somehow gotten access to Mom's personal belongings. I drove to Dad's house that evening, using my spare key to enter when no one answered the door. The house felt different, lived in by someone new. Amanda's belongings were scattered throughout the living room, expensive designer purses, and clothes that didn't match her bartender salary. In the kitchen, I found receipts showing she had been ordering premium groceries and having them delivered, all charged to Dad's credit card. But the real violation was in Mom's old sewing room, which Dad had kept exactly as she left it. The room was in disarray, with Mom's memory boxes opened and their contents spread across the floor. Her travel magazines were stacked on the desk, many pages torn out. Her jewelry box was empty, and I noticed several pieces of Mom's jewelry and photos on Amanda's social media from recent nights out. I called Dad's number 3 times, but each call went straight to voicemail. Finally, I texted him directly, "Dad, we need to talk about the Japan trip situation." His response came back immediately. Kevin explained everything. Amanda will be more enjoyable company, and she's already so excited about the cultural experiences. The phrase "cultural experiences" felt like a knife twist, because those were the exact words Mom used when talking about her Japan dreams. Dad was using our dead mother's language to justify replacing me with his son's girlfriend of 3 months. I spent the next several hours going through 16 years of financial records, documenting every sacrifice I had made for our family. After Mom's death, I had postponed my own education to work full-time. I paid for Kevin's car insurance, cell phone, and living expenses throughout his 20s. I bought and maintained the house Dad lives in, covering property taxes, repairs, and utilities. I owned 3 rental properties, including the duplex, where Kevin lives without paying rent. The math was staggering. Over 16 years, I had provided over $200,000 in direct financial support to my family members. This didn't include the opportunity costs of delaying my own life goals, the relationships I didn't pursue, because I was always focused on family responsibilities, or the business opportunities I passed up to ensure my family's financial security. Yet somehow, despite being the person who made their comfortable lifestyle possible, I was seen as the controlling, uptight family member who needed to be excluded from special occasions. The next morning, I received a call from my private investigator friend Marcus, who specializes in background checks for my financial planning clients. I had asked him to run a discreet inquiry on Amanda after feeling uneasy about her interest in our family's finances. Cecil, you need to hear this. Amanda Johnson has been involved in 3 similar situations over the past 5 years. She targets successful men through their family members, specifically brothers or fathers. Her pattern is to integrate herself into family dynamics, gather information about assets and financial situations, then manipulate family relationships to gain access to money. Marcus continued with details that made my stomach churn. Amanda's real name was Amanda Richardson, and she had warrants in 2 other states for fraud and identity theft. She had convinced a family in Colorado to loan her boyfriend $50,000 for a fake business venture, using insider information about their family trusts. In Arizona, she had manipulated an elderly man into adding her to his bank accounts after dating his son for only 2 months. There's more Cecil. She's been photographing documents during family gatherings. I have a contact who saw her taking pictures of papers in your dad's house during a dinner party last week. Based on her previous patterns, she's likely planning to convince Kevin to ask you for a substantial loan, probably using his share of family property as collateral. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. Amanda hadn't randomly fallen for Kevin's charm. She had researched our family, identified me as the financial provider, and was systematically working to isolate me while gathering intelligence about our assets. The Japan trip exclusion wasn't about fun or spontaneity. It was about removing me from the equation while she solidified her influence over Kevin and Dad. I hung up the phone and sat in my office feeling the full weight of betrayal. My family wasn't just taking me for granted, they were being actively manipulated by someone who saw them as marks in a long-term financial con game. And they had chosen her over me. That evening, I sat in my home office surrounded by travel documents, legal papers, and financial records. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't planning how to support my family. I was planning how to protect myself from them. I opened my laptop and pulled up the travel agency's cancellation policies. My hands shook slightly as I began the process of systematically dismantling the trip I had spent months planning with such care and love. The first call was to Japan Airlines. The customer service representative, Linda, was sympathetic when I explained I needed to cancel 3 first-class tickets due to a family emergency. The cancellation fees would cost me $2,000, but the remaining $7,000 would be refunded to my credit card within 10 business days. I'm very sorry about your family situation, Mr. Henderson. These tickets were booked in the premium flexible category, so you'll receive most of your money back. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Actually, yes. I need to make sure these specific passengers cannot rebook using the confirmation numbers or my frequent flyer miles. Linda walked me through the process of flagging the account to prevent unauthorized rebooking. Next, I called the Park Hyatt Tokyo. The hotel manager, speaking excellent English, was understanding about the cancellation, but explained their policy for bookings during cherry blossom season. I would forfeit the $1,500 deposit for the luxury suite with Mount Fuji views, but I could cancel the remaining charges for the week-long stay. The private tour guide was more challenging to cancel because I had paid him directly through a cultural exchange program. Hiroshi had already begun preparing custom itineraries based on the information I had provided about my mother's interests. He was disappointed, but professional, agreeing to refund half of the $400 deposit while keeping the rest for preparation time already invested. The restaurant reservations were the most painful to cancel. Some of these establishments had waiting lists months long, and I had secured our spots through connections in the hospitality industry. The 3-star Michelin restaurant where I had planned to recreate Mom's dream dining experience couldn't offer any refund for their $50 per person reservation fee, but they released our spots back to their waiting list. Each cancellation felt like cutting away pieces of my heart, but also like removing heavy chains that had been weighing me down for 16 years. Every phone call represented another step toward freedom from being taken for granted and manipulated. The most significant cancellation was the private tea ceremony at the Urasenka Foundation. This experience had been the centerpiece of the entire trip, designed specifically to fulfill Mom's written wish to participate in an authentic Japanese tea ceremony. The ceremony cost $800 for 3 people, including traditional dress rental and a meditation session in their historical garden. As I explained to the foundation coordinator that I needed to cancel our booking, I felt a deep sadness for my mother's unfulfilled dream. But I also felt a strange sense of relief, knowing that her memory wouldn't be tainted by Amanda's presence at such a sacred experience. After completing all the cancellations, I called my attorney friend Marcus to discuss legal options for protecting my assets. Marcus had handled the property purchases for my rental investments and was familiar with my family's financial arrangements. Cecil Kevin's been living in your duplex without a formal lease for over 2 years now, since his original rental agreement expired, and he's been there on an informal basis. You can require him to sign a new lease or vacate with 30 days' notice. Marcus explained that my father's living situation was more complicated because I had purchased the house with both our names on the deed as a way to help Dad qualify for better mortgage rates. However, the property taxes, insurance, and maintenance had all been paid exclusively by me creating a legal argument for financial abandonment if Dad violated the informal occupancy agreement. What constitutes a violation of the occupancy agreement? I asked. Allowing unauthorized long-term residents failing to maintain the property or using the address for fraudulent financial activities. Based on what you've described about Amanda's presence and the credit card charges, you might have grounds for requiring new living arrangements. During our conversation, Marcus mentioned something that changed everything. Cecil, did you ever complete the probate process for your mother's estate? I remember there were some complications with her will that got postponed due to your family's financial stress at the time. I felt my blood run cold. What do you mean Mom didn't have any assets to probate? We used her small life insurance policy to pay for medical bills and funeral expenses. That's not entirely accurate. Your mother had established a small trust fund for Kevin before she became ill. The fund was supposed to mature when he turned 25, but the legal paperwork was never finalized due to complications during her illness. The money has been sitting in a court-controlled account, earning interest for 16 years. I stared at Marcus in shock. How much money are we talking about? With interest, probably around $35,000. It was originally $15,000 from her grandmother's estate, but it's been growing in a conservative investment account managed by the court system. The revelation was staggering. For 16 years, I had been sacrificing my own financial future to support Kevin, believing he had no other resources available. Meanwhile, there was a trust fund with his name on it that could have provided him with the independence and security he needed to build his own life. More importantly, this money could have changed everything about our family dynamics. Kevin wouldn't have needed to live in my rental property. Dad wouldn't have needed me to buy his house. I could have pursued my own dreams and relationships instead of always being the family's financial caretaker. Marcus, why wasn't this trust fund information provided to us after Mom's death? Probate court records show that your father was notified multiple times, but he never responded to the paperwork requests. After 2 years, the account was transferred to inactive status with the state. Kevin could have accessed it at any point after his 25th birthday by filing the proper claims. I realized that Dad had known about Kevin's trust fund for years and never mentioned it to either of us. He had allowed me to sacrifice my own financial future while Kevin's inheritance sat untouched in a government account. This wasn't just negligence. It was a deliberate choice to keep me in the role of family provider. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I would not only cancel the Japan trip, but I would also begin the process of establishing healthy boundaries that should have been set years ago. If my family wanted to exclude me from important events and replace me with strangers, they could also learn to function without my financial support. The next morning, Kevin, Amanda, and Dad departed for what they believed would be their dream vacation to Japan. I received a group text with photos of them at the airport, all smiling and excited. Amanda was wearing what looked like Mom's pearl necklace and matching earrings jewelry that had supposedly been safely stored in Dad's house. One photo showed Amanda posing next to the departure board with the caption, "Dreams do come true when you're with the right people." She was holding a first-class boarding pass that she believed would take her to Tokyo within the next few hours. I spent that morning at my office trying to focus on client meetings and quarterly reports, but my mind kept wandering to the conversation that would happen when they discovered their flights had been canceled. Around noon, I decided to drive to Dad's house to check on things while they were away, something I had been doing for years whenever he traveled. Using my spare key, I entered the house and immediately noticed changes that made my skin crawl. The living room had been completely rearranged with expensive furniture, moved around to accommodate Amanda's belongings. Designer handbags worth thousands of dollars were scattered on tables next to Dad's old recliners. In the kitchen, I found evidence that Amanda had essentially moved into the house weeks ago. The refrigerator was stocked with organic food and premium wines that Dad would never purchase for himself. Credit card statements on the counter showed charges at high-end grocery stores, expensive clothing boutiques, and luxury spas, all on Dad's accounts. But the real violation was in Mom's bedroom, which Dad had kept as a shrine to her memory for 16 years. Amanda had clearly been using the room as her personal space. Mom's dresser was covered with Amanda's makeup and jewelry. The bed had different sheets, and clothes were scattered across Mom's antique furniture. I opened Mom's jewelry box with trembling hands and found it completely empty. Every piece of jewelry that Dad had preserved as remembrances of their 40-year marriage was gone. Checking Amanda's social media posts from recent weeks, I could see Mom's jewelry being worn to parties and nightclub events treated as costume accessories rather than precious family heirlooms. The basement revealed even more disturbing evidence. Cardboard boxes containing my childhood memorabilia had been opened and rifled through. Photo albums documenting our family history were scattered on the floor, many with pictures removed. School awards, report cards, and letters I had written to Mom during her illness were spread across Dad's workbench, like someone had been searching for valuable information. I found a notebook in Amanda's handwriting, containing detailed information about my business property ownership and financial accounts. She had been systematically gathering intelligence about my assets, including noting which banks I used, estimated property values, and even details about my client relationships. Most disturbing was a section titled Kevin's Inheritance Options, where Amanda had written calculations about potential loans and property transfers. She had researched the legal process for accessing inherited assets and had detailed plans for convincing Kevin to request substantial financial support from me. While I was documenting this evidence with my phone camera, I received a call from an unknown international number. My heart started racing as I recognized Kevin's voice, but the cheerful excitement from this morning was completely gone. "Cecil, something's wrong with our flights. They're saying our tickets were canceled, and there are no available seats on any other flights to Tokyo today. The airline is claiming they have no record of our reservation, and our confirmation numbers aren't working." I could hear panic in Kevin's voice as he continued. "The hotel is also saying they have no record of our booking. Amanda is freaking out because she already posted about the trip on social media, and Dad is confused because he doesn't understand how reservations work." "Where are you right now?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "We're at the airport in Los Angeles. Our connecting flight to Tokyo was supposed to leave an hour ago, but when we got to the gate, they said our names weren't on the passenger list. We've been going back and forth with customer service for 3 hours." I could hear Amanda arguing with someone in the background, her voice shrill and demanding. Dad sounded exhausted and confused, asking Kevin repeatedly what was happening and why their vacation wasn't working. Kevin, have you tried using your credit cards to book replacement flights? That's the weird part. My cards are being declined, and so are Dad's. Amanda tried to use hers too, but she says there must be some kind of system error because she knows she has available credit. The irony was perfect. They were stranded at the airport with no way to travel, no place to stay, and no access to the money they had assumed would always be available through me. For the first time in their adult lives, Kevin and Dad were experiencing the financial insecurity that most people face when they can't rely on someone else's resources. Cecil, I know you're probably upset about the whole Amanda thing, but we really need your help right now. Can you call the airline and hotel to fix whatever technical problems they're having? I promise we'll figure out a way to include you in the trip. This was my moment of truth. I could rescue them like I had done countless times before, or I could let them experience the natural consequences of their choices. Before I could respond, Amanda grabbed the phone from Kevin. Cecil, this is ridiculous. Your family is stranded in a foreign airport because of some computer glitch, and you need to fix it right now. Kevin says you're good with travel planning, so handle this situation before it gets worse. Her entitled tone made my decision easy. Amanda, I need to tell you something important. Those weren't computer glitches. I heard a sharp intake of breath before Amanda's voice turned cold and calculating. What do you mean? I canceled all the reservations yesterday after receiving Kevin's text about my replacement. Since I planned and paid for everything, I have the right to modify or cancel the bookings. The phone went silent for several seconds before Amanda exploded in fury. You vindictive bastard. You deliberately sabotaged your own father's birthday celebration because you're jealous that he chose me over you. I could hear Kevin trying to get the phone back from Amanda, while Dad asked confused questions about what was happening. The chaos on their end contrasted sharply with the calm I felt sitting in Dad's living room, surrounded by evidence of Amanda's deception and theft. Amanda, while you're stranded at that airport, I want you to know that I'm currently in Dad's house, documenting evidence of credit card fraud, identity theft, and burglary. Mom's jewelry is missing. Family documents have been stolen, and there are thousands of dollars in unauthorized charges on Dad's accounts. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again with Kevin's number. Cecil, Amanda says you're lying about her stealing things. She says you planted evidence because you want to break us up. Dad believes her, and they both think you're having some kind of mental breakdown. Kevin, check your bank accounts and credit cards. Really look at the charges from the past month. I heard Kevin typing on his phone for several minutes. When he spoke again, his voice was different, uncertain, rather than defensive. There are charges here I don't recognize. Expensive restaurants, clothing stores, SPA treatments. But Amanda says those were family expenses for Dad's birthday celebration preparations. Kevin, does Dad typically spend $300 on a single manicure, or $500 on a purse? More silence as Kevin processed the evidence. I could hear Amanda in the background, her voice urgent and persuasive, offering explanations for each suspicious charge. Cecil, I don't know what to believe right now. We're stuck in this airport with no money and no way to get home. Amanda is crying. Dad looks sick, and everyone is staring at us like we're criminals or something. I'll help you get home safely, Kevin. But first, Amanda needs to return Mom's jewelry, and Dad needs to see the evidence of financial manipulation. This isn't about jealousy or control. It's about protecting our family from someone who targeted us deliberately. Targeted us, Cecil. You're being paranoid. Amanda loves our family. Kevin, Amanda's real name is Amanda Richardson, and she has outstanding warrants for fraud in 2 other states. She's done this exact same thing to other families, and I have the police reports to prove it. The silence on the phone stretched for almost a minute before Kevin spoke again, his voice shaky and uncertain. Cecil, what are you talking about? Her name is Amanda Johnson, and she's from Minnesota. I opened the file Marcus had provided and began reading directly from the police reports. Amanda Richardson, also known by aliases Amanda Johnson, Amy Roberts, and Mandy Rich. 24 years old, blonde hair, 5 feet 6 inches tall, distinctive butterfly tattoo on her left shoulder blade. That describes Amanda exactly. But Cecil, lots of people could match that description. Kevin put me on speaker so Dad and Amanda can hear this too. I heard some fumbling with the phone before Kevin announced that I was on speaker. Amanda's voice immediately cut through the background noise of the airport. Cecil, I don't know what kind of sick game you're playing, but these lies are going to destroy your family. Kevin and your father will never forgive you for ruining this trip with your jealousy and control issues. Amanda, or should I call you Amy? That's what the police report from Colorado says your boyfriend called you when you convinced his family to loan you $50,000 for a fake catering business. I could hear Dad's confused voice, asking Kevin what was happening and why everyone was shouting. The poor man sounded exhausted and overwhelmed, probably not understanding how his birthday celebration had turned into this nightmare scenario. In Arizona, you dated a 26-year-old named Brad, whose father owned a chain of car dealerships. You convinced the father to add you to his business banking accounts after dating Brad for 6 weeks, then transferred $43,000 to overseas accounts before disappearing. Amanda's voice turned venomous. You're making this up because you can't stand that your brother chose someone fun and exciting over his uptight, controlling older brother who treats everyone like employees instead of family members. Kevin, I'm texting you the police report photos right now. Compare the booking photos to Amanda's face and tell me what you see. I heard Kevin's phone buzzing with the incoming messages, followed by a long silence. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. Amanda, these photos, they look exactly like you. Same face, same tattoo, even the same scar on your chin from when you said you fell off your bike as a kid. Kevin, don't let him manipulate you with fake documents. People can Photoshop anything these days. Your brother is trying to isolate you from the best thing that ever happened to your love life. But Dad's voice cut through Amanda's protests stronger and clearer than it had been all day. Amanda, how did you know about Sarah's jewelry box combination? I never told you the numbers, and Kevin doesn't know them either. The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could picture Amanda's face as she realized she had been caught in a lie she couldn't explain away with charm or manipulation. I must have seen you open it during one of our family dinners. I have a good memory for numbers. Amanda. Dad continued, his voice gaining strength. I haven't opened Sarah's jewelry box in over 3 years, and I certainly never opened it when you were present. The combination contains Sarah's birthday and our wedding anniversary information that only family members would know. While this confrontation was happening 3,000 miles away at LAX airport, I was implementing the second phase of my plan. I called my property management company and authorized them to change the locks on Kevin's duplex rental unit. Since his original lease had expired 2 years ago, and he had been living there on an informal month-to-month arrangement, I could legally require 30 days written notice for any changes to the living situation. Next, I drove to the hardware store and purchased new locks for Dad's house. As a co-owner of the property, I had the legal right to modify security arrangements, especially when there was evidence of unauthorized occupancy and potential criminal activity. The locksmith, an older man named Frank, was efficient and professional. He installed high-quality deadbolts on both the front and back doors, providing me with the only set of keys. Frank also installed window locks and a security system that would alert me to any attempts at unauthorized entry. While Frank worked, my phone rang with another call from Kevin. This time, Amanda wasn't arguing in the background, and Dad sounded more alert and focused. Cecil, we need to talk seriously about what's happening here. Amanda just admitted that she's pregnant, and she's demanding that you wire $50,000 to an account for baby expenses, or she'll sue you for emotional distress and elder abuse. Kevin, 2 hours ago, she was denying everything. Now she's suddenly pregnant and demanding money. Does that timeline seem suspicious to you? She says she's been waiting for the right time to tell us about the pregnancy. but your accusations forced her to reveal it earlier than planned. She wants compensation for the stress you've caused her and the baby." I could hear Amanda coaching Kevin on what to say, her voice urgent and manipulative in the background. This was her final play, the last manipulation tactic from someone who had been cornered and exposed. Kevin asked Amanda when she took the pregnancy test and where she's planning to receive prenatal care. Ask her about the father's identity and whether she's contacted him about financial support. I heard Kevin relaying my questions, followed by Amanda's increasingly frantic responses. Her answers were evasive and contradictory, claiming she had just discovered the pregnancy that morning, but also saying she had known for weeks. "Cecil, she's saying the timeline is complicated, and she needs time to process everything emotionally before discussing medical details. She just wants us to focus on getting home safely, and then sorting out the financial support issues." "Kevin, there's something else you need to know. While you've been stranded at that airport, I've been in Dad's house documenting evidence of theft and fraud. Amanda has been living here for weeks, using Dad's credit cards for personal expenses, and she's stolen every piece of Mom's jewelry." "That's impossible. Amanda would never steal from our family." I sent Kevin a series of photos showing the empty jewelry box, the credit card statements with unauthorized charges, and Amanda's social media posts, where she was wearing Mom's distinctive pearl necklace and diamond earrings. "Kevin, I'm also texting you photos of a notebook Amanda kept with detailed financial information about my business, my properties, and calculations for how much money she could extract from our family through you." The phone went quiet, except for airport background noise while Kevin processed the photographic evidence. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow and defeated. "Cecil, some of this looks really bad. Amanda says she can explain everything, but the timing seems too convenient. And Dad is asking questions about Mom's jewelry that Amanda can't answer." "Kevin, I need you to understand something important. I've contacted the police about Amanda's outstanding warrants. When your flight lands back home, she's going to be arrested on fraud charges from the other states." Amanda's voice erupted in the background, screaming about false accusations and legal retaliation. She threatened to sue me for defamation, harassment, and conspiracy to commit fraud. "Kevin, she's threatening to destroy our family with lawsuits unless you convince me to drop all charges and pay her $50,000 in hush money. Does that sound like the behavior of an innocent person who loves you?" The turning point came when Dad took the phone from Kevin. His voice was tired, but clear, the voice of a man who had finally seen through months of manipulation and lies. "Cecil, I need to apologize to you. I've been a fool, and I let a stranger poison me against my own son. Amanda showed me text messages that she claimed were from you, saying terrible things about our family and expressing resentment about supporting us financially." "Dad, I never sent any text messages like that." "I know that now. She manufactured those messages to turn me against you, probably the same way she manufactured the pregnancy claim and the explanations for stealing your mother's jewelry. I'm ashamed that I believed her over my own son." I could hear Amanda pleading with Dad in the background, her voice desperate and panicked as she realized her manipulation was completely unraveling. Kevin sounded confused and heartbroken, finally understanding that the woman he thought he loved had been using him as a pawn in an elaborate financial scam. "Dad, Kevin, I need you both to listen carefully. When you land at the airport tomorrow, there will be police officers waiting to arrest Amanda on outstanding warrants from Colorado and Arizona. You two will be free to go home, but you'll need to find alternative transportation because your credit cards will remain frozen until we can sort out which charges are legitimate." The call ended with Dad and Kevin agreeing to cooperate with the police investigation. Amanda's voice could be heard in the background, still trying to manipulate the situation by claiming victim status and threatening legal retaliation. That night, I slept peacefully in my own house for the first time in years, knowing that I had finally protected my family from someone who had targeted and manipulated them. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I felt free from the burden of enabling people who had taken my sacrifices for granted. The next evening, I received a call from Detective Sarah Williams of the Los Angeles Airport Police. Amanda Richardson had been arrested on outstanding warrants from Colorado and Arizona, and Kevin and Dad were free to return home on a flight I had arranged and paid for through a different airline. Mr. Henderson, the suspect, was also found in possession of stolen jewelry that matches the descriptions in your police report. She's being held without bail, pending extradition to Colorado, where she faces the most serious charges. Detective Williams explained that Amanda had tried to flee the airport when she realized the police were waiting for her. She attempted to use a fake identification card with the name Amy Roberts, but the airport security cameras had tracked her movements, and she was apprehended trying to board a flight to Mexico. She also had over $12,000 in cash hidden in her luggage, along with additional jewelry and electronic devices that appear to be stolen from multiple victims. We're coordinating with law enforcement in several states to identify other families she may have targeted. The next morning, Kevin called me from Dad's house. His voice was exhausted and ashamed, completely different from the confident, dismissive tone he had used just days earlier. "Cecil, I don't know how to apologize for what happened. Amanda played all of us, but especially me. I should have listened to your concerns instead of defending her automatically. Kevin, I need you and Dad to come to my office this afternoon so we can have a serious conversation about our family's future. There are legal and financial matters we need to discuss, and some changes that need to happen." That afternoon, Kevin and Dad sat in my office conference room, looking like defendants awaiting sentencing. Dad appeared older and more fragile than I had seen him in years, while Kevin couldn't make eye contact with me. I spread out legal documents, financial statements, and police reports across the conference table. The evidence of Amanda's manipulation was overwhelming, but it also revealed deeper problems with our family dynamics that had made us vulnerable to her schemes. First, let's discuss the immediate legal issues. Amanda's theft of Mom's jewelry constitutes felony burglary, and the unauthorized credit card charges amount to identity theft and fraud. The district attorney is building a case that includes charges related to our family and her previous victims. Dad raised his shaking hand like a student asking permission to speak. "Cecil, I need to know if I'll face charges for allowing her to use my credit cards." "Dad, you won't face criminal charges because you were clearly a victim of manipulation. However, you'll need to work with the bank's fraud department to dispute the unauthorized charges and establish new account security." I pulled out a folder containing information about Kevin's trust fund, the revelation that would change everything about our family's financial dynamic. "Kevin, there's something you need to know about Mom's estate that affects our entire family situation. When she died, she had established a trust fund for you that was never properly finalized due to complications during her illness." Kevin looked confused and concerned. "What kind of trust fund? Mom didn't have any money when she died." "The trust was funded by an inheritance from Mom's grandmother, about $15,000 that was supposed to mature when you turned 25. With interest over the past 16 years, it's now worth approximately $35,000. The impact of this information was immediate and devastating. Kevin realized that he could have been financially independent for years, while I had been sacrificing my own opportunities to support him. "Cecil, why didn't anyone tell me about this money?" I looked directly at Dad, whose face had gone pale with shame and guilt. "Dad, why don't you explain to Kevin about the probate notifications you received from the court system?" Dad's voice was barely a whisper. "I knew about the trust fund, but I was afraid that if Kevin had access to that money, he would move away, and I would lose both my sons. I thought if I kept it quiet, our family would stay together." The silence in the room was deafening. Kevin stared at Dad with a mixture of shock, hurt, and anger that I had never seen before. "Dad, you mean I've been struggling financially for my entire adult life, while my own inheritance was sitting in a bank account? Cecil has been supporting me for 16 years, when I had my own money available." Nebri. "Kevin, I was lonely and scared after your mother died. I didn't want to lose my family, so I made selfish decisions that hurt both of you." The truth was finally out, but it brought more pain than relief. Our family had been built on deception and financial manipulation for 16 years, creating dependencies and resentments that had nearly destroyed us. I presented Kevin with the legal paperwork to claim his inheritance, along with a new rental agreement for the duplex that reflected market rate rent and clear tenant responsibilities. Kevin, you now have the choice to be financially independent or to continue relying on family support. But if you choose independence, it comes with adult responsibilities and consequences. I also presented Dad with documentation showing the real costs of home ownership, including property taxes, insurance maintenance, and utilities that I had been covering for years. Dad, you can continue living in the house, but you'll need to contribute to the actual costs of home ownership, or consider moving to a more affordable living situation. The most difficult conversation was about trust and family relationships. I explained that while I was willing to maintain family connections, the financial dependencies and manipulation had to end immediately. I love both of you, but I can't continue being the family's financial safety net when that role is being exploited and taken for granted. Amanda was able to manipulate us because our relationships were based on money rather than mutual respect. Kevin signed the rental agreement and agreed to begin making monthly payments starting the following week. Dad chose to sell the house and move into a senior living community where he could make genuine friendships without the burden of property maintenance. 3 months later, Amanda Richardson pleaded guilty to multiple fraud charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The judge noted that her pattern of targeting families through romantic relationships showed sophisticated planning and callous disregard for her victims' emotional well-being. The stolen jewelry was returned to our family, and Dad placed it in a safety deposit box rather than keeping it in his new apartment. He said he wanted to preserve Mom's memory without being haunted by Amanda's violation of those precious objects. Kevin used his inheritance money to enroll in a professional certification program and eventually started his own small business providing handyman services. For the first time in his adult life, he was supporting himself through his own efforts rather than relying on family assistance. The legal and financial changes forced us to rebuild our family relationships on healthier foundations, but it also revealed damage that would take years to fully heal. 6 months after Amanda's arrest, our family began attending counseling sessions with Dr. Patricia Martinez, a therapist who specializes in family financial trauma and manipulation recovery. The sessions were difficult, but necessary for understanding how our family dynamics had made us vulnerable to someone like Amanda. Financial enmeshment often creates patterns where family members confuse money with love, Dr. Martinez explained during one of our early sessions. When financial support becomes the primary way of expressing care, it can enable unhealthy dependencies and resentment. Kevin was the most motivated to change his patterns. His new handyman business was growing steadily, and he took pride in earning his own income for the first time in his adult life. He insisted on paying back rent for the months he had lived in my duplex without contributing, even though I told him it wasn't necessary. Cecil, I need to pay my debts to you, not because you're demanding it, but because I need to prove to myself that I can be responsible. Amanda was able to manipulate me because I had never learned to value money or understand how much sacrifice you made for our family. Dad's transformation was slower but equally meaningful. Living in the senior community forced him to develop social skills and friendships that didn't revolve around family obligations or financial support. He joined a woodworking club and began creating beautiful furniture pieces that he gave as gifts to his new friends. I realized that I had been using your financial generosity as an excuse to avoid building my own independent life, Dad told me during one of our weekly dinners. After your mother died, it was easier to rely on you than to learn how to be self-sufficient. The most significant change was in my own life. Without the burden of constantly managing other people's financial crises, I had energy and time to pursue my own goals and relationships. I started dating seriously for the first time in years, and even considered expanding my financial planning business to include family therapy referrals. Dr. Martinez helped us understand that forgiveness doesn't mean returning to old patterns. Healthy boundaries are acts of love, not punishment. Cecil's decision to stop enabling financial dependence was actually the kindest thing he could do for his family's long-term well-being. 1 year after the Japan trip disaster, I surprised Kevin and Dad with a new vacation proposal. This time, the trip would be smaller and more modest, but it would be paid for equally by all three of us. Kevin would contribute his portion from his business earnings, Dad would use his Social Security income, and I would pay my own share without subsidizing anyone else. I want us to visit Japan together to honor Mom's memory, but this time as equal partners rather than as dependents and provider. I explained. We spent a week in Tokyo and Kyoto, staying in a comfortable but not luxurious hotel, eating at local restaurants rather than expensive establishments, and taking public transportation instead of private tours. The experience was more meaningful than the elaborate trip I had originally planned, because it was built on mutual contribution and respect. At the Sensoji Temple, we held a small ceremony honoring Mom's memory. Kevin had brought one of her travel magazines, and Dad shared stories about her dreams of experiencing Japanese culture. I felt her presence with us in a way that would have been impossible if Amanda had been there polluting the experience with her manipulation and greed. The tea ceremony we attended was simple and authentic, held in a local community center rather than an exclusive foundation. The elderly Japanese woman who guided us through the ritual reminded me of Mom in her gentle patience and attention to detail. When she explained the philosophy of finding peace through mindful preparation, I understood why this experience had meant so much to Mom. The way of tea teaches us that every gesture has meaning, and every moment can be sacred if we approach it with respect, the tea master explained through a translator. Family harmony comes from each person contributing their unique gifts while honoring the whole. Kevin surprised me by crying during the ceremony, finally grieving for the mother he had lost and the brother he had taken for granted. Dad held both our hands as we sat in meditation, acknowledging the mistakes he had made and committing to healthier relationships going forward. On our last day in Japan, we visited a botanical garden where cherry blossoms were blooming out of season. The unexpected beauty felt like a gift from Mom, a reminder that new growth is possible, even after devastating losses. Cecil. I want you to know that this trip meant more to me than the expensive vacation you originally planned, Dad said as we walked among the blossoms. This time, I earned the right to be here through my own contributions, rather than taking advantage of your generosity. Kevin had brought a small wooden box that he had crafted in his woodworking class, designed to hold some of Mom's ashes that we had brought with us. We scattered the ashes in the garden with permission from the groundskeeper, finally fulfilling Mom's dream of experiencing Japan's natural beauty. The healing process wasn't complete, and probably never would be. There were still moments of tension and old patterns that required conscious effort to change. But our family had learned to distinguish between love and financial obligation, between helping and enabling, between forgiveness and accepting abuse. 2 years later, Kevin married a woman named Jennifer, who works as a nurse and shares his values about financial responsibility and family boundaries. Their wedding was modest and paid for by both families, contributing equally with no single person bearing the entire financial burden. Dad remains in his senior community, where he has developed close friendships and even a romantic relationship with a widow named Dorothy, who appreciates his woodworking skills and cooking abilities. He contributes to family gatherings by bringing his handmade gifts and preparing his famous chili recipe. I eventually expanded my financial planning practice to include a specialty in helping families recover from financial manipulation and fraud. Amanda's case taught me to recognize the warning signs of predatory behavior, and I've helped dozens of families protect themselves from similar schemes. The most important lesson I learned was that protecting people from the consequences of their choices doesn't help them grow stronger or wiser. Real love sometimes requires allowing people to experience discomfort so they can develop their own resilience and self-respect. If someone in your family is taking advantage of your generosity while excluding you from important events, it might be time to set boundaries that protect both your resources and your emotional well-being. Financial support should enhance relationships, not replace them, and family loyalty should never come at the cost of being treated with respect. Have you ever found yourself financially supporting family members who don't appreciate your sacrifices? How did you handle situations where your generosity was taken for granted? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below about finding the balance between helping family and protecting yourself from manipulation. Thank you for listening to my story about learning to value myself enough to demand respect from the people I love. I hope it encourages you to examine your own family relationships and make changes that lead to healthier, more honest connections. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe for more real-life family stories, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family members. Remember, true family relationships are built on mutual respect, not financial obligation, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable behavior that damages everyone involved.